There is a bull standing in short grass at 6 in the morning with somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 ticks attached to him. They are packed into the folds behind his ears, around the base of both horns, along the underside of his neck, and in the soft skin between his back legs. Each fully fed female on that body is holding close to half a teaspoon of his blood, and there are hundreds of them at that stage right now. He weighs about 1,700 pounds, and he cannot reach 90% of his own body with any part of himself. There are 4 small birds working across his shoulders, and they are not here to help him. They are here because he is the most valuable piece of property any of them will ever hold. And today, 2 of them will fight over the right to stand on his neck. That sounds like a partnership, and for most of the last century, it was written down as one. It is not a partnership in the way you are picturing it, and the evidence that it ever was is thinner than almost anyone admits. It is a lease on a moving surface, held by a bird that cannot survive anywhere else, and paid for by an animal that is never asked about the terms. Stay to the end, because the last thing that happens today does not happen on this buffalo at all, and it is the only event that decides whether these birds are still here in 10 years. Here is the whole day before we take it apart. At 5:20, a flock of red-billed oxpeckers leaves a stand of reeds and flies out over open ground, looking for a herd that moved in the night. At 6, they land on him, and within 90 seconds, the argument about who works which part of his body is settled for the day. At 9:30, one of them is hanging upside down under his jaw, cutting through hair with a bill built like a pair of shears. At 12:30, he walks into the river, and the lower half of him is handed to a completely different set of contractors that these birds cannot compete with. At 3:10, one of them finds an open wound on his flank, and that is where the honest part of this story starts. And at 6 in the evening, one bird makes a sound lasting under a second that is worth more to this bull than everything else the flock has done all day. The bull is in his 12th year, and out here he is called Ndoro. He stands 5 feet at the shoulder, carries a boss of fused horn across his skull that is thicker than a man's wrist, and he is close to the top of what a Cape buffalo can be. He is also, from the point of view of a parasite, 70 square feet of warm skin that moves slowly through long grass all day. Every step he takes brushes questing ticks off grass stems and onto his legs, and he takes about 8,000 steps between dawn and dusk. He is not being hunted by the thing that is actually costing him. He is walking through it all day on purpose, because that is where the grass is. The bird on his neck is a red-billed oxpecker, and she is called Keto. She weighs under 2 ounces, which is roughly 1/15,000th of the animal she is standing on. She is 8 inches long, most of it tail, and she will spend virtually every waking hour of her life on the body of a large mammal. She does not feed on the ground. She does not feed in trees. She has no meaningful foraging behavior that does not involve standing on something else's back. And that single fact is the whole story, because it means she does not have a territory in the way other birds do. Her territory has legs. Think about what that means for a moment, because it is genuinely strange. Every other bird on this landscape defends a place, a patch of ground, a tree, a stretch of riverbank. She defends an animal, and that animal walks 8 miles a day and does not consult her about where it is going. When he crosses into the next valley, her entire estate crosses with him, and everything she owns is standing on 4 legs that belong to somebody else. And she does defend it, which is the part that ruins the friendly version of this story. Oxpeckers fight each other over individual host animals, and they fight hard, on the host, in front of it. A big adult buffalo bull with a heavy tick load is prime property, and a young thin buffalo is not. The birds are not distributing themselves across the herd according to need. They are distributing themselves according to yield, and the dominant birds take the best bodies. At 6 this morning, 2 of them went at each other across Ndoro's shoulders for about 90 seconds, and he did not react because it does not concern him.
Now look at the tool she does the work with, because everything she can and cannot do comes out of it. Her bill is not a normal bird's bill. It is flattened from side to side, so that seen from above, it is almost a blade. She does not peck at a tick and pull it off the way a person would with fingers. She puts the bill flat against the skin and works it sideways through the hair in short, fast strokes, and everything standing above the skin gets scissored off the surface. It is not surgery, it is a mowing action, and it is indiscriminate by design. And she is built to do that on a vertical, moving, shaking surface, which is a harder problem than it sounds. Her feet are short and strong, with sharply curved claws, and she can grip hair rather than a branch. Her tail is stiffened, and she braces it against the animal like a woodpecker on a trunk, which is what lets her hang upside down under a jaw with both feet above her. She can work the inside of an ear, the rim of a nostril, and the skin between the back legs of an animal that could kill her by lying down. There is no part of this bird that is designed for anything except standing on a mammal. So the value she offers is straightforward, and it is real. One oxpecker can take more than 100 fully fed female ticks off a host in a day, or well over 10,000 larval ticks, which are the size of a full stop. A tick that reaches full size on this bull takes close to half a teaspoon of blood, and it does not do it alone. Across a heavy season, an untreated adult buffalo can lose several pints of blood to parasites, which is a serious number for any animal. And the ticks bring things with them that are far worse than the blood loss. That is the part that does not show up as a wound. Ticks out here carry the organisms behind theileriosis, anaplasmosis, and heart water. And a herd carrying a heavy tick burden is a herd carrying disease pressure. A calf in its first year with a bad load will grow slower, and it will go into the dry season with less reserve than the one next to it. Nothing about this kills a strong bull outright. It taxes him continuously from birth. The ticks are not a predator. They are an overhead, and he has almost no way of paying that overhead down by himself. He can shake his head, flick his ears, swish a tail that reaches perhaps a third of his own body, and rub against a tree trunk hard enough to damage bark. He can roll in dust, which smothers some of them, and he does it whenever there is a wallow within reach. What he cannot do is get anything sharp and fine into a fold of skin behind his own ear, because he does not have hands, and he does not have a partner who does. So he outsources it, in the only way an animal can outsource anything, which is by tolerating something that does the job for its own reasons. At 9:30, Keto is under his jaw, upside down, working a fold of loose skin. She finds the heaviest concentrations first, and there is nothing sentimental in the order she works in. Ears, horn bases, neck, brisket, groin, the inside of the back legs, and then the hard, flat surfaces of the shoulders and back last. Those are not the places where the buffalo is most uncomfortable. They are the places where the yield per minute is highest. A cleaner would start where it is dirtiest. She starts where it pays. And she is not the only one on him, and the others are not all the same species. Yellow-billed oxpeckers work the same animals, and where the two species overlap, the yellow-billed birds are the larger, and generally push the red-billed ones onto the less profitable parts of the body. That is not cooperation between species. That is a bigger company taking the better sites. So the 4 birds on this bull are not a crew. They are competitors, standing on the same building, tolerating each other because the building is big enough. At 12:30, Ndoro walks into the river, and the whole arrangement changes shape in about 2 minutes. The water comes up over his belly, and within a few minutes there is a dense school of small fish around every part of him below the surface. They press their mouths against his skin and work the folds of his belly, his groin, his thighs, down to his hooves. As one fish moves off, another takes the same spot, so the effect is a moving carpet across the entire underside of a 1,700-pound animal. And the oxpeckers cannot follow them there, and do not try. What is interesting is how little conflict that produces. The fish take everything below the waterline, which is the part the birds cannot reach and have never been able to reach. The birds take the head, the ears, the horn bases, the neck and the back, which is the part the fish will never see. One animal, 2 completely separate contracts running at the same time, with a boundary drawn by the surface of the water. Nobody arranged that. It is simply what happens when a large body is a resource and several different tools evolve to work different parts of it. And for 20 minutes in the middle of the day, that bull stops fighting his own skin. His head stops swinging, his ears stop the constant hard flicking, his eyes half close. The flies are still there, because nothing here deals with flies, but the thing that was itching all morning has been reduced. That is the closest thing to relief available to an animal that has no hands, and he will come back to this bend of the river to get it again tomorrow. Now the honest part, because this is where the standard version of the story falls over. In the late 1990s, a researcher ran the obvious experiment on cattle in Zimbabwe, keeping oxpeckers off some animals and letting them work others. If the friendly version were true, the birds should have produced a clear reduction in tick numbers on the animals they were allowed to work. They did not, or at least not reliably, and the difference was far smaller than a century of nature writing had assumed. What did change measurably was the wounds. Open wounds on animals with oxpeckers on them stayed open longer. The birds went back to them, worked the edges, and kept them from closing, and in some cases created new ones. That is not an accident of clumsy feeding. Blood is a better food than a tick is, and it is available without searching. A tick has to be found in dense hair on a moving animal. A wound is a fixed, marked, reliable source that reopens every time it is worked. An animal that fed only on ticks would be a cleaner. An animal that prefers fully fed ticks and will take blood directly is something else. And notice what the preference for fully fed ticks actually means. The most valuable tick, from the bird's point of view, is the one that has already finished feeding and is swollen with the host's blood. That is also the tick that has already done nearly all of its damage and taken nearly everything it was going to take. The bird is not preventing the loss. She is collecting the blood after it has been extracted, using the tick as a container. Removing a fully fed female does stop her laying thousands of eggs, which matters over a season, but it does nothing for the pint of blood already gone. So the correct description is not mutualism, and it is not parasitism. It is a relationship that sits somewhere on a line between the two, and slides along that line depending on the day. On a bull with a heavy tick load and no injuries, the birds are close to a straightforward benefit. On a thin animal with an open sore in the rainy season, they are a cost that keeps reopening. The same behavior, unchanged, produces both outcomes, because the bird is not choosing between them. She is doing one thing, and the host's condition decides what it means. And this is where the buffalo's own behavior tells you what he thinks of the deal. He does not tolerate everything. Buffalo, rhino, and other hosts will shake off, roll, or actively drive birds away from a fresh injury, repeatedly. Most of the time, and on most parts of his body, he does nothing at all and simply carries them. That is not affection, and it is not gratitude. It is an animal accepting a running cost because the alternative is worse, and there is no third option. He is not friends with these birds. He has decided over and over that they are cheaper than the ticks. At 3:10, one of them finds a place on his flag where a thorn opened the skin 2 days ago. He swings his head round, which achieves nothing, because his horns are the wrong shape for reaching his own ribs. The bird moves off, waits perhaps 40 seconds on his spine, and goes back. That is the whole negotiation, and it repeats several times an hour. And the bird wins most of the exchanges because she can afford to lose all of them. He has one body and a lifetime. She has a wound and an afternoon. And then, at 6 in the evening, the account balances in a single second. Something moves in the grass about 80 yards downwind, low, slow, and heavier than anything that should be there. One of the birds on Ndoro's back sees it, goes rigid, and makes a hard, hissing rattle, and every oxpecker on every animal in that part of the herd is airborne within a second. The buffalo do not need to see the lion. They need to see the birds leave, and they have just been told by 4 separate animals standing 4 feet above the grass that something is coming. That alarm is not a favor, and it is worth being exact about why it is still worth so much. A bird standing on a buffalo's shoulder is looking at this landscape from a height no member of the herd can achieve, with eyes built for detail. When she calls, she is not warning the buffalo, she is reacting to the fact that the surface she is standing on is about to become extremely dangerous ground. The herd gets the information for nothing, as a byproduct, the way a neighborhood benefits from somebody else's alarm system. In parts of East Africa, the same bird is called the rhino's guard, and studies on black rhino found that rhinos carrying oxpeckers detected approaching humans far more often than rhinos without them. So the value of this bird to a large mammal may not be the ticks at all. It may be that a herd of animals with poor eyesight has effectively rented a network of elevated observers who work for wages the herd does not have to negotiate. The cleaning is what everybody photographs. The early warning is what may actually be paying for the relationship. And neither of those is why the bird is here. She is here because there is food on this animal and nowhere else. Because understand what happens to her when the hosts go. Oxpeckers nest in tree cavities, and they line those cavities with hair plucked directly off the animals they live on, along with dung and grass. They breed cooperatively, with helpers from previous seasons feeding the chicks, and everything they carry into that hole comes off the back of a large mammal. The chicks are fed on ticks, brought in a bill from a body that may be a mile away. There is no version of this bird's life that survives the removal of big animals from a landscape, and that is not a theoretical risk. Across large parts of southern Africa, red-billed oxpeckers disappeared from their historic range in the 20th century. And the cause was not habitat loss. It was arsenic in cattle dip applied to control ticks on livestock. The birds ate the treated ticks and the residue on the treated animals, and the population collapsed over huge areas where cattle had replaced game. They have been reintroduced in places since, as dips changed to compounds that are less lethal to them. So the single largest event in this species' modern history had nothing to do with predators, weather, or competition. It was a change of chemical policy on somebody else's animals. That is what happens when your entire habitat is another organism.
The bird does not have a place to retreat to. There is no marginal territory she can hold in a bad year, no poor ground she can survive on until conditions improve. Her habitat is a species, and species can be fenced, treated, moved, farmed, or removed. A bird that lives on grassland can survive the loss of any particular field. A bird that lives on buffalo cannot survive the loss of buffalo.
So the ledger for today looks like this, and it is less flattering to everybody than the friendly version. 4 birds removed several hundred fully fed ticks from one bull, which will prevent an enormous number of eggs and a small amount of future blood loss. The same 4 birds took blood directly, kept one wound open, and will be back on it tomorrow morning. The fish took everything below the waterline for 20 minutes and asked for nothing. And one hiss lasting under a second may have been worth more than all of it. And nobody in this story intended it. They are not cleaning him, they are grazing a surface, and the surface benefits from being grazed on most days and pays for it on the rest. Everything that looks like cooperation out here is usually 2 animals extracting different things from the same event, and being tolerated because the extraction is cheaper than the alternative. He is not a host with helpers. He is real estate with tenants, and the tenants pay in information they were going to broadcast anyway. And 7 miles south of here, at the boundary fence, there is a concrete channel filled with water and a drum of chemical standing beside it. Tomorrow morning, about 400 cattle will walk through it, one at a time, and every tick on every one of them will die within a day. Nobody involved will think about the birds, because the cattle are not the point of the birds, and the birds are not the point of the cattle. But the herd that Ndoro's flock works in the dry season is not the buffalo. It is those cattle, because the buffalo move and the cattle do not. And a bird whose entire habitat is the skin of large animals has no way at all of finding out what is in that drum until she has already fed on it.